Hi, welcome to My Favorite Mistake. I'm Mark Raven. Our guest today is Fred Moore. Has been, and still is, a professional speaker and entertainer for the past 25 years. My first mistake of the episode. You could think of him, and he is, a corporate magician. Fred has done over 6,000 performances, and he's also done presentations in 30 countries. You can learn more about Fred at his website, dosomuchmore.com. So Fred, thanks for being a guest. How are you today?
Thanks for being here, or thanks for me being here. That's two mistakes, right? That's two mistakes. And did you just call me a has-been? You just called me a has-been, didn't you? You're like, he has been. You know, it's all right. It's good. I've been called worse.
Cut his mic.
Yeah,
no, thank you. Thank you for turning your mic on. That was the pre-recording. We got off on a very mistakey, appropriate
Exactly.
start.
Exactly. It's all good. And evidently we called each other because their shirts match. I just noticed that.
Yeah, for those who are just listening, they'll have to picture light blue shirts, me in a polo and Fred in a button-up. But
Exactly.
yeah. So before we get going, Fred, your URL, your domain name, I'm curious, why dosomuchmore.com?
When I was first getting into the speaking side of it, I've been an entertainer for 30 some odd years now. And when I was getting into the speaking side of it, all right, well, I need a domain name that's going to obviously point to what as a speaker, they tell you that you got to have a book. You're not a speaker unless you have a book.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote a book. And the book was on productivity and getting more done. And the title of the book was Do So Much More. And I was smart about that. Before I decided on the title, I made sure the domain name was available.
Yes.
Because I'd made that mistake with my name. I have a website, morefred.com. And I got that because fredmore.com wasn't available. When I initially checked it was, and then 2 weeks later, gone. So it was like, So whenever I find a good domain name, I latch onto it. So
a squatter gotcha, maybe, as they say, domain squatters. That's not the type of profession kids aspire to, like Instagram influencer.
Right. Yeah. No.
Yeah. But now it would be a mistake if listeners, it's do so much more, More, not like your last name, Moore. Does that ever trip anybody up?
Correct. I thought about trying to be clever like that, but I don't want to be clever like that. That's just too confusing. Interesting though, when I bought morefred.com, I also bought morefred.com. And there's too many .coms I'm saying right here. Just do so much more. Stay there. That's all you get.
Yeah. All right. Check that out on the interwebs. But Fred, I think you from what I've seen of your work, you are clever in a lot of ways. And I'm sure you have a clever story for us, or interesting, or both. What would you say, Fred, is your favorite mistake?
It's funny because there's so many. If you talk to anybody who's done anything or been successful, they've been failures more than they've been successful people. So probably my favorite failure is, I'll give you a little background. I'm an entertainer. I've been doing that for a long time. I still entertain, but I also do the speaking. And I was working on a show. And this show, I got to tour the world. My wife was actually involved in the show as one of the dancers, and I was one of the magicians in the show. Big production, toured the world 2 years. We went to Europe, we went to South America, and the show had been going on before I had joined it. I had replaced somebody else. And due to legal reasons, I can't say exactly who this show was involved, but they had big ears and, ha, how you doing there, kiddos? So you make an idea from that.
Yeah.
And 2 years into this show, everything's going great. We come around for the third year of the contract, and it was a U.S. tour. Awesome. Getting ready to do that. We rehearsed. Everything was good. About 2 weeks into it, I get a call from the production manager. Hey, let's have a meeting. Okay. I come to the meeting. In walks in the head of HR for the whole company. Not just the whole company. And that's never a good sign. I swear, as soon as he walked in, I heard dun, dun, dun. And I knew something bad was going to happen. Something not good, at least for me, wasn't going to happen. And I was thinking, it's like, well, what's going on? I don't know. I've been working for 2 years. I've gotten good reports. I don't get it. he sat me down, we blah, blah, blah. And he's like, all right, well, let's get right to it. We know you have a 9-month contract, and you've read our contract, and there's an out clause in the contract for either of us. And we've decided we're going to release you from your contract. I love the way they put it. Release you from your contract. Basically, you're fired.
Free.
Right, you're fired. And it was like, okay. And I'm like, why? It's like, well, it's just you're not fitting in with the way the show is going right now. Turns out they wanted somebody younger, and they didn't need somebody that had my skill set. It was a very smaller role, so they made some changes. And I get it. Now I get it. At the time, it was like, okay, I've got a 9-month contract. And if you know anything about performers, it's usually gig to gig to gig. And long-term contracts are rare. I mean, they're out there, but if you can get a 9-month contract, that's awesome. I didn't have to look for work for 9 months now.
There's stability, yeah.
Exactly, which is, again, rare in a lot of businesses. So now, all of a sudden, the rug has been pulled out from under me, and boom, I got nothing. I had 9 months of work. I was turning down work before. Now I got nothing. And it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I could do two things. I could sit there and wallow in my misery, which I did for about a day. And then I decided, all right, well, there's nothing I can do about this. Let's move on. And I started working and started making phone calls and getting some traction. But then a couple of weeks later, this one, I got to look back on this, and it's like, well, what happened? Why am I in this situation? You know, what was the failure in this? And I looked at it, and I realized in this particular show, I was replaceable. They weren't hiring Fred Moore. They were hiring somebody to stand there, do this, and say that. Right? It was an acting role more than anything. I was just a commodity. I could be replaceable. So that's when I learned, all right, I need to not be replaceable. That's the whole point. It's like, they're not coming, it's like, to me because, all right, we need a keynote speaker at our conference. We need a virtual speaker at our thing. We need a magician at our thing. No, they're coming to me because they need that, but then they go, oh, we want Fred Moore. That's what we want.
Right.
So now there's no competition. There's no other choice. They either get Fred Moore or they get somebody like Fred Moore.
If they can find that.
If they can find that.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
hopefully.
I mean, you've got a very particular set of skills that you bring out on stage, even in a corporate presentation type setting from the clips that I've seen online. It seems like there's a fine line between entertainer and corporate presenter. You can be both. You can be entertaining with a solid, helpful message, right?
Oh, exactly. And that's why a lot of meeting planners are pretty smart about it. They need to bring in somebody that not just has good information, because, I mean, if you've been to any of these conferences, you can go to some of the breakout sessions, and these are people that have the good technical knowledge, but they're not professional speakers. And after an hour or so, it's, you know, whereas a professional speaker knows when to break up the monotony, when to insert something that's funny or something that's going to grab people's focus back from their phones and whatnot.
I mean,
being an entertainer first. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I mean, I think of conferences where there are presenters who stand on the floor in front of a screen in a breakout room, and doing well in that environment is different than trying to command a big stage in a big room. It's not just about the content. It's about presence and knowing how to work that size of room. Because otherwise you could, you could print out a Wikipedia page and put it up on stage.
Oh, exactly. That's, I say I love to see this, but I hate to see this when presenters go up there and they bring up a slide and it's just full of text, bullet point. It's like, could have just sent me a PDF and I would have got the same information, and I would have just saved 45 minutes.
Yeah, you could have taken that PDF out by the pool instead of being in the conference ballroom. Yeah, we're veering into speaking pet peeves maybe here accidentally, but my favorite is when somebody puts up. No, it's all right. I mean, somebody speaking mistakes, and I'd like to think these were in my past, but putting up a slide that's really, really, really dense, and someone says, I know this slide is an eye chart, but I'm like, well, then why did you put it in the deck that way? If
Yeah.
you're acknowledging that it's too small, too much, blah,
Oh yeah.
let's learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
So back to your story, Fred, and for those who need further hints while staying out of legal trouble, this could be coincidence, but Fred is based in the Orlando, Florida area.
This is
If you
correct.
weren't already kind of getting to what he
Yeah.
was hinting at with the story, but so I'm interested to hear more about that reflection of the situation. It's what I hear you saying was the mistake was being in a role where it wasn't particular to you. Like, did you shift directions to where corporate speaking would be more the situation of we want Fred. Fred's not replaceable. Or you're still in more of the entertainment realm? Were there things that you did to adjust to be less replaceable?
Yeah. In the keynote speaking world, typically I am sort of a commodity in the aspect that they have a need, right? They need a keynote speaker for their event. What I can do to differentiate myself from everyone else is the fact that I'm entertaining and I'm funny, and there's the magic and there's the message as well. So it's they call it, infotainment, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of an easy, not an easy in, but an easy idea to bring across. Since I was already entertaining, adding the information and then determining what the information was from the book I'd written years ago and all that was easy enough. So.
Yeah. And so then what year was it when you made a bit of a shift to focus more on speaking and corporate events?
It was probably right around that time. It was 2010, so 11 years ago. And I've been doing a bit of both. And when I was doing that tour, like I said, I was enjoying myself because, hey, they paid us to go to Europe, to South America. I've been to so many different places since then, too. But once that happened, my focus had to shift dramatically. Because I had to learn is like, all right, I can't be a commodity anymore. I can't be replaceable. And then in the situation where now I've got nothing, what do I need to do to fix that? And to fix that was just take what Tony Robbins called massive action. I need to do a lot of things right now. I need to contact, I need to market, I need to get my name out there. I just need to, work on the business side of the show business right now.
Yeah. And, kind of thinking back to this combination of speaking and writing, well, I hear your thoughts on this. So what I would propose is somebody who's got speaking skills can get a book written, whether they write it or they get varying degrees of help. I mean, as an author, I realize writing a book is a big challenge, but it's doable. I think sometimes there is a poor assumption that's made, or we could frame it as a mistake, that just because somebody wrote a book, therefore they can get up on stage and be a compelling speaker about it.
Yeah, that's. I think there are two polar opposite skill sets for sure. And like you said, it's totally most speakers. If it's a good speaker, they can write a book or they can get somebody. A lot of speakers, what they'll do is they'll record their speech and they have it transcribed, and they got a book.
Yeah.
It's not a great book probably to read, but it's a book. Whereas a writer will sit there and think about the sentence and the structure, and at least a good writer, and the story and how it ties together and what words to use and all that. And if you just basically read that on stage, it's probably not going to be anywhere near as good. And plus the fact that if it's a good book full of information, it's going to end up being a 4-hour speech, and nobody wants to sit through that.
Right. So, Fred, I want to ask about times when, as a magician, or even I've seen some of your corporate clips of bringing someone from the audience up on stage. Like, that can be really entertaining. There's these variables and ways maybe that it's risky. How do you handle it when there are mistakes on stage? Do you expect it? Do you just try to, like, let's say if somebody isn't following your instructions, or if it was I don't know, a cruise ship and somebody's drunk and you didn't realize it? I mean, is that a mistake? Is that potential gold? Does it just depend?
It depends on the situation and the person. A lot of times, and it happens more often than not. I've gotten pretty good over the years of picking the right people from the audience. Mm-hmm. I don't want to pick somebody that is all like, woohoo, pick me, because they want attention. And I can guarantee that once they get on stage, they're gonna want more attention than I want.
Yeah.
And it's probably not going to tie into when I do it. Now, sometimes that can be funny. I've had that happen where it's like, oh, she seems very, not really shy, but, not going to be like too, and woohoo, they'll just go crazy, which can be funny. It just depends on the situation. I've had several instances where once or twice I had to, quote, fire somebody on stage. Yeah, they were in the middle of a routine. It's like, you know what? How about we do this? Go have a seat, and why don't you help me instead?
Well, why'd you have to do that, or why'd that seem?
Well, normally I wouldn't do that if the audience was on my side. If the audience was on their side, if they were enjoying what was going on, because if they're messing with me and I'm, that's funny to me, because normally that's not what you would see. But if they're just not cooperating, like in this instance, it was just like, here, pick a card. No, I'm not going to do that. And it's like, no. Okay, well, here, put the card in here. No, I'm gonna keep it. You can't have it. And
that doesn't
I
seem
understand
fun for the audience.
Yeah, they think it's fun. They think they're being hilarious. The audience is like, this is awkward. And so I'll be like, why don't you just go sit down? It's okay. And I'll usually, as they're going down, I'll look at the audience and give them like, yeesh. And the audience is like, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
And they get somebody up and then just carry on. But sometimes when stuff like that happens, I enjoy it because I'm used to doing kind of the same thing again and again and again. Mm-hmm. And it's those unknown elements that make it fresh for me. It makes the show spontaneous.
In the past year, Fred, with COVID, any of us who've depended on travel or being someplace on stage or whatever, that's there've been fewer or no opportunities for that. How did you pivot to working on virtual stages or doing virtual events? What are some of the things you've done? Were there any mistakes? Were there lessons learned in working in that format?
Oh, yeah. Like, you can just Google it on YouTube and you'll see tons and tons of video mistakes at conferences. The early one was the guy talking to the news reporter and his kid walks in the other room and his wife comes in and grabs the kid and drags him out. Was it not too long ago, somebody had a filter on that made him look like a cat, I think it was, or something.
Right.
It was a lawyer how to turn it off.
Who had to tell the judge, "I am not a cat."
I am not.
That's the first thing a cat would tell you if they were.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you're a cat. We can tell. But yeah, mostly it was like technical stuff, and I did something that I think is pretty smart. I had to dial in the tech. That was the biggest challenge. And I'd already been doing a lot of videos. I had a studio set up in my office to do YouTube videos and stuff. So it was just not a huge leap to get into live streaming or live content. But there was a learning curve, obviously. So I started doing Facebook Lives twice a week. Sometimes I didn't know what I was going to talk about an hour before, but I knew I was going to commit myself to doing it twice a week. Because then I could fail, and I could fail fast. And I could learn what all the mistakes were and what to do to fix them. And I didn't have a huge following, so it was minor little things. And one of the topics I talked about was failure. And I would share stories of massive failures, epic fails that I'd had in my life. So if something screwed up in the live stream, it was like, well, it just kind of plays into the thing, right? Doesn't it? There was one I was about 15 minutes into it, and I checked my phone because I had the comments there, and because I was really into the story and all that, and I look, and somebody had commented like 10 minutes into it, your microphone's not working. So I'd been blah, 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 blah for 10 minutes and nothing. And it's like, click. Okay, so where was I?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And fortunately, that kind of stuff, I can go back and delete it off of Facebook. And it's only going to live in the moment. And if I want to get rid of it, I can delete it and it's fine.
Right. So I don't mean to pick on you about this, but the microphone issue, at least you caught that before. Well, I couldn't hear you, right? Yeah. So before we went into the recording here, you had that happen. I don't know. This is more of a suggestion, like for people who are just listening and not watching on YouTube. Fred's got the clip-on lavalier mic that you have to turn on. Where, you know, just thinking out loud, like my microphone here is just perpetually plugged in, perpetually on. So the process improvement guy in me is wondering how can we help you error-proof that? Or it's just a case of making sure there's somebody willing to speak up and say, hey, I can't hear you.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny, on my Amazon list is that next purchase right there is the mic right here, so I don't have to worry about this, because like earlier today I went out and got fresh batteries.
Right.
And I think this is my default because this is what I'm used to using, being on a stage.
Sure.
Yeah, and if I'm doing a virtual presentation that is more magic related, I'll be standing up and it'll be a wider shot, so I'll be moving around a little bit more. So but that is I think probably the best solution right now.
Yeah, well, so it's a good point. It depends on the setting, because you don't want to be, for certain virtual presentations, tethered to a desk.
Exactly.
And I can see where that
But I like your idea, because when it's time to do these videos or podcasts or whatever I'm doing, the mic's there, I don't have to worry about it. Click the button and go. So simple. Yeah. Simple is better.
Sure. So our guest today, again, Fred Moore. Check out his website, dosomuchmore.com. Want to ask a couple other things. In your email signature, it says you're a certified virtual presenter. What does that entail? I don't think I've seen that before.
Obviously, it's relatively new in this past year, and it's a company. They're more of a database for speakers bureaus. They gather, you sign up for it, and you can get listed with other speakers bureaus, and it's a resource to check out their information. It's where your bio lives, your fees, all that good stuff. And they were getting calls from bureaus saying, all right, we need somebody to do a virtual presentation, but are they any good? We know they're good on a stage, but good on a stage doesn't necessarily translate to good in the virtual world. Just like you can be, it's going to be a really good writer, but you're not a really good speaker. So they said, okay, how do we know? And so they were getting clips of them actually doing things, and that's when they came upon the idea, well, why don't we set some criteria and submit, and then the speakers submit to them, it's like, all right, I want to try to get this certification from you. And they go through and they test your mic, your video, they log you off and see if you can log back on. They throw a bunch of tech issues at you to see. They make sure your microphone's turned on, and so they certify that you can handle the tech. You're good enough at what you do that it's going to look presentable, it's going to sound good, and you can work the tech. As far as the content, that's all up to you. So it's just a way for speakers bureaus or agents or companies that are booking people to go, oh, okay, well, they know what they're doing, so I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. So how do you address, I mean, so the thing I struggle with sometimes, and I wouldn't say I'm, really a comedian. I'm not a comedian. When I do my presentations, I have certain lines that I think predictably get a laugh, and I think that's a good thing. But to me, doing a webinar presentation or a virtual presentation is like talking into a black hole. You don't hear laughter. You maybe don't even see facial expressions of delight or nodding or boredom. I mean, how do you cope with that challenge of maybe not seeing your audience, not getting feedback?
It's funny. Before all the virtual stuff, I was doing a lot of YouTube videos, and it was talking directly to the camera. And I'd learned a long time ago that, especially on videos like that, that you need to imagine you're talking to one person. And the same thing when you're doing a speech, you're talking to one person. You don't say, everybody here should do this. You say, you should do this. You. Because you are talking to one person, the person that's listening to you. Now, there may be 1,000 people listening to you, but to each of those individuals, it's just about them. So that, and it's all about, the connection, eye contact with the camera. Right before we started this, I shifted the screen so that I'm looking at you right now. I've got a teleprompter here with the camera behind it, but the image I'm seeing is you. So I'm making eye contact with you, but I'm also looking right at the camera. And the big problem, of course, is, like you said, the energy. You're not talking to anybody. But if you can imagine that you're talking to somebody, I know people that they tape a picture right below the camera of their wife, their husband, their kids, whoever they imagine that they're talking to. Could even be the client or the audience, so that you have an idea in your mind of that you're talking to somebody, and it's a conversation. And if I'm on stage, I'm going to be animated. I'm going to be like this. I'm gonna be me, as opposed to talking and reading off the teleprompter what I'm going to say next.
Right. That's a whole different skill, and politicians use prompters a lot, and some of them are good at making it seem really extemporaneous, and some of them you can tell they're clearly reading, and sometimes they're reading it for the first time. Well, so you've got a good setup, because on my screen I've got your image as high up as I can get it. Like right now I am looking right at the camera. So there's a good lesson there in trying to retrain myself. It's tempting. I want to look at your eyes, but that's down below. So hi audience, or hi Fred, looking into the camera is a good practice. But you've got the setup where you're literally, like, I know how a teleprompter works. You're looking through a mirror, and there's a image. The words are projected up on it, so you're literally looking through. You have that set up right now? Okay. Exactly. I might ask you to send me a picture of that later.
It's essentially a third monitor.
That setup.
But it's easy enough.
Well, that's a great tip. So, Fred, one other thing I was going to ask you is just going back to more the beginning of your career, and this probably goes back to childhood. How did you get into magic? Like, what was the spark and the appeal for you?
I always wanted to be a performer ever since I was a kid. I was the youngest of 4 boys, and they were all 2 years apart in age, except for me. I was 5 years apart from my oldest brother. So, and this is what I'm thinking has sparked my creativity over the years, is the fact that they were older than me. So it got to a point where they didn't want to play with me anymore because I was too young, and they were on to older things. So I spent a lot of time in my imagination and discovered theater and whatnot. And so all through middle school, high school, I was involved in drama. I took tap dancing lessons, wasn't any good at it. Took music lessons, wasn't any good at it. Tried different things, but I wanted to be on a stage. And then 16 years old, that's when my high school guidance counselor sat me down and said, all right, you're 16 years old. What do you want to do for the rest of your life? Real smart. Yeah, I know. I'm 16. I don't know. I'm growing in hair in places I didn't know I should have hair, and my hormones or what. And so I looked at him and I said, I want to be a magician. Because I'd always, dabbled in magic like kids do. Got the magic kits at Christmas. And he looked at me and went, good luck with that. Because he had no way to send me, no resources. I don't know what to tell you, kid. Good luck. And so I took lessons from a magician, and I decided, I think, it was a way for me to connect with people, because I was very shy. You talk to a lot of performers, and they're inherently very shy. If I'm in a social situation where I don't really know anybody, I probably am not going to be Mr. Extrovert. I'm going to be an introvert. And so it was a way for me to connect with people and meet girls, for one thing, because here's something cool I can do that nobody else can do. So that's kind of sparked that, and that got me going into performing, and then thinking about the idea, it's like, oh, okay, I could probably make a living at this, couldn't I?
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm glad that path worked out for you. You get to follow your dream and pivot and make adjustments from the different lessons along the way. So I appreciate you sharing that idea. And I think there's a takeaway thought for dear listener. I'm going to address the listener, not the listeners. The intimacy of having our voices pumped into somebody's ears directly is to think about, and this is something I'll think about, what can you do to make yourself less replaceable in terms of your employment or your career or what you do. I think that's a really good thing to think about. So thank you for your story, Fred, and everything that you've shared with us here today.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, well, good. And the website again is do so much more, more.com. Fred Moore with 2 O's, and the name of the book again was
Do So Much More.
The book is Do So Much More about productivity.
And the website is Do So Much More. Yeah.
I feel like that's a mistake. I feel like that was a mistake in terms of either my listening skills or my retention skills. I apologize.
Probably retention. That's all right. That's all right.
My mistake. Yeah. The book and the website and the guy, do so much more.com. You can hire Fred to speak and present virtually or at some point back on stage. And then one other thing I was going to ask, I saw on the website, here's a mistake I think a lot of conferences make. They don't have a professional, energetic, lively MC. Yes. So how would you make the pitch of like, why should a conference go through the extra expense of hiring you to be the master of ceremonies?
That's an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked. A lot of times at conferences, it's talking head, talking head, talking head, talking head, and talking head. And I know at a lot of companies, especially if it's a company conference, the CEO wants to be up there, and he wants to be the Steve Jobs, and that's awesome. But he has a lot of other things he needs to do in the company. More important things: talking with the clients, the people that are paying the bills for the conference. Taking them out to lunch, talking with them, networking, and all that. And it's great for him to be a face up there, but to have a through line throughout the conference. That's where the emcee comes in. The emcee provides brain breaks instead of just constant information dump. It's here's something different, here's something funny, here's something to take your brain out of that information overload mode. And it makes people laugh to release tension. It creates networking, it creates camaraderie between all the attendees because now they're a group in a shared experience of this funny event that happens to be a conference.
Yes, and I've seen the difference. I think that's a great pitch, and as an audience member, I will, or even as a speaker, I'll make the pitch. The events I've seen that have a professional MC, it does make a difference.
Oh yeah.
So Fred is one of those people that maybe you'll be the MC someday for an event I'm speaking at. That would be fun. But
there you go. I'd love to bring you on stage.
All right. Well, thanks, Fred. I tried my best to introduce you, and maybe someday, you might be introducing me. But Fred Moore has been our guest here today. Thanks a lot. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.